Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another Higher Hertz episode. My name is Justin Leppard, your online cello teacher, and today we are continuing our journey with part 3 of learning Suzuki Cello Book 1. The Suzuki Cello Book series is probably the most popular cello book series, and the reason for that is the fact that it orders its repertoire really, really well. It's just really good sequential repertoire, and it creates some amount of standardization across just different people who've learned classical music. So while I still really advocate for being able to break up your practicing into scales, etudes, and rep, this is a great place to go for that rep. All right, so this is part 3. We've already gone and learned different meters. We've done 2/4, we've done half time, we've done common time, we've done 3/4. We've learned some different tempos, moderato, andante, allegro. We've learned some different rhythms, order notes, eighth notes, dotted quarter notes, and it all kind of culminated in perpetual motion, which was the last piece we learned in the last video. And that one was just all eighth notes, and it was all in the key of D. So now we're starting to make a departure from the D major top 2 strings thing. So now we're going to continue learning. So this is the first song where we're going to use not only the lower 2 strings, but more than 2 strings. We're going to basically mostly be on the G string, but we're going to have a few notes on the D string and a few notes on the C string. Other than that, the structure is going to be really similar to what we're already familiar with. We are dealing with quarter notes and eighth notes and basically just playing scales and a phrasing pattern that makes sense. So one of the things I really want to emphasize through working on these tunes are what the phrasing is. Like, what is the music trying to say? Because even though these are, very simple and in many ways dinky, they really can lay a foundation for how to play more complicated music beyond just the technique. So I will also mention that as we go along. So with this one, we start on the open G string. And we're just playing the G major scale, but every time the note starts, it's the same one. So that's the quarter note. Then the next phrase starts the same. There's the quarter note. It starts again on B. Open D string. And then that half note is 4 eighth notes. So if you're a little stuck there, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So even already in there, we've already got basically the phrase structure that we're used to seeing for whole songs, where we had a question 2 bars, we had an answer 2 bars, kind of went to a different place. But that's kind of cool when you see that miniature form within the bigger form. So now we're at the actual B section where, we're in the key of G now. So the dominant chord is D. When we were in D, the dominant chord was A, and dominant just means it's the chord that most wants to resolve to the main key. So in D, the chord that has the greatest tendency to want to resolve to D is A major. So when we're in the key of G, we're looking for D. So when we see D, we know we're at this place that's away from home but wants to return there, basically. And one of the things that can make it help as you start to work on the individual sections of these songs and put it together is trying to think bigger picture. So if you can start to see the first 8 bars as like one big sort of question phrase, and then the second 8 bars as their big, then you're probably going to be playing more musically because everything's going to make more sense relative to what's coming before and after it. So I love these couple of notes that they have on the C string. So one of the things that's the hardest about getting down on the C string is the tendency is going to be to over angle the bow because of what you're used to on the other strings. But you have to remember to be parallel to the bridge. And so you're going to have to pull your wrist in just a little bit. And you can put a little separation there because the low notes, they're so growly to begin with. Yeah, that sounds fine. Just try to give them their little pop, because you don't want just a bad sound for those two low notes. All right, we're going to keep going because I want to be able to go through these. Now, as I mentioned in the other videos, don't just play through them as quickly as I'm playing through them. I'm just playing through them to point things out about them, so that you could hear them, to kind of show them to you, but just mostly to show you what the most important parts are so that you can practice this on your own. But take the time to actually practice on your own, pause the video or come back to the video. All right, the next song we're doing is number 11, Allegretto. So when we have this etto thing, etto kind of means a little bit less than, and its companion is isimo, which means a little bit more than. So fortissimo is like more than forte. Allegretto is less than allegro. So we have a lot of different terms for a lot of different tempos. But as I mentioned in the last video, you can think, you're just basically going like really slow, moderate, or fast. Everything else is just kind of telling you how to feel that moderate. Is the moderate that you're trying to hold back going faster? Is the moderate just that you're content to be going that fast? Is the moderate that you're actually a fast slow? Those are the differences that the different terms connote, but you can group them generally however is useful for you to think. So allegretto, we're also in the key of G, and we have a lot of different markings. So this is important. So we have both staccato and tenuto markings. The staccato markings are the dots, and they're going to mean that the notes are going to be separate and shorter. The tenuto marking means that we're going to play a full value of the note. Mostly this is a way, it seems, of exaggerating the difference between the eighth notes and the quarter notes that are probably already there. Sometimes the markings in here are accentuating things that you're already going to do. For example, in the previous song, it was giving dynamic markings in the second half that were basically what we would expect anyway, that the bridge is going to this other place, but then since it's repeated, it's going to be quieter. Some of these things are marked, but they're also implied by the music to begin with, so the marking confirms it. So in this case, the markings confirm that the eighth notes are mostly supposed to be shorter than the quarter notes. And the one place this is different is towards the end when it comes back. And I think what they mean by marking both staccato and tenuto is that they want it to be a full and separate sound. So in contrast to at the beginning where staccato can often imply a little bit off the string, here we're going to be still full and big when it's both the tenuto and the staccato marking. So let's play through this. It's, again, really straightforward. If you've been practicing your scales, this is all in the key of G major. And again, remember to take care of where your bow is going to be. So it can actually just be helpful. We're starting to work on some new strings here. Just do right hand. Watch the notes. Think about which string your hand would need to be on, but just... So if you can't already do that, then you're trying to put the fingers to it, that can be a lot all at once. So that can be helpful to do. Just try to get that good sound. And if you're struggling with the sound, think about how your fingers are springs and think about the angle that your bow is at. Try different contact points and try to figure out how to make it easier to do it than to not do it with your whole body. Just take some time to work out the mechanics of it. Your body is a little bit unique, and how your brain controls it is certainly unique. So that is the point of practicing and why you have to do it. All right, so let's keep going. These two marks, they're sometimes called railroad tracks. It's known as a caesura, and it just means to take a pause. It's kind of another way of writing a comma, but it's a little more drastic than a comma. So we'll keep going. And I think it can be nice to give some love to those quarter notes. That's how you're going to make this phrase sound different from the first phrase. Everyone, play with a slightly different intensity in the string, a slightly different bow speed or bow amount, maybe even a slightly different vibrato if you've been able to work on vibrato already at this point. So those are the sort of things that will allow you to phrase it, because you can actually just think, what are the first notes of these bars, or even just every half bar? It's a scale. Dun, 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 So those notes carry the phrasing. All of the other notes, like, you can follow the rule that, the higher up you're playing, the louder you're playing. But I mean, they're a lot more similar sounding because they're shorter. The differences are going to come in these quarter notes. So let's finish this out. And they wrote in that diminuendo because, and that little kind of bird's eye thing, that's a ritardando as well. So you hold that note out. Train tracks, they're really basically spoon feeding us how we're supposed to phrase this. And even though it probably would have been common sense for most of us, after seeing the railroad tracks, the a tempo that's marked there just means that we're playing the original tempo, not some slowed down tempo, slowed down by the ritardando. All right, guys, awesome. Remember, go at your own pace with these. I'm just kind of showing you how to read the music, playing it for you guys, but go slow. They have the fingerings in here. I think they stopped doing that in like book 3 or something, but for now you have them. So, that's good for also just learning what the notes are. All right, let's keep going. Andantino. So the thing is, this is continuing to be in G major, continuing to work with some of these staccato notes, but it looks like the range of this is a little bit greater. So let's see what challenges this poses. So here we have andantino. Again, it's kind of a variation of andante, like a little less than walking tempo, perhaps. So we have 3/4 open D. That's kind of our theme. In good music, so basically all of these tunes, which are written really well, there's going to be like one sort of riff that's transposed and made different. So we have this idea, dun dun dun, and basically the rest of this piece is basically variations of that, because you have ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Those are like exactly the same, just different notes of the scale. And then you have this, da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, same thing, that's just the same pattern going up. So something to think about with this one, that we can go a little deeper with transforming that little musical idea the way that the composition does. So let's go through. Always think about where you're going musically. And then when we have those hairpins, the crescendo and the decrescendo, they're making it even clearer that, yes, we can move towards. Most music, if it's like a 4-bar phrase, the peak is going to be like beat 4 of bar 3 or somewhere around there, because that's, like 3/4 of the way through. Golden ratio, that sort of thing, if you know about that. It's not really that important, but yeah, it's going to be about 2/3 of the way through. So that's another reason why the B section will happen halfway through the piece or even a little bit later as well, so that, it's just occurring at the right time for our sensitivities about it. All right, I always break these up. Let's keep going now. Oh, so sad. I think that really is supposed to be sad because there's no fancy rhythms. It's all going down. And they've written a decrescendo and a rit for ritardando, which means slow down. So also, I think it would be appropriate to just lift a little at the bottom there. Then we go back a tempo. And then at the end there, they also really overmark and even you're supposed to wait. But that's what this piece is. And again, when you're practicing it, it can be good to just either do hands separately. You could do left hand this time. Really think about how stable your hand is. You can even hear just a little bit still. So you kind of have a sense of whether you're in tune or not, and then when you're playing, it's okay to just either go slow like that or to go slow like this. And then, if you hear something that you didn't like, just start over. But if you get a little stuck as to what you're supposed to do, just go back to the notes and just try to figure out what makes it interesting, what makes it tick, and what makes that story work. All of these have just been basically the same story. So as you see that's basically the same thing that we have every single time we have one of these songs, it's going to make you look for what are the things that are different about this song's, question and answer phrases and B section that brings us back to the first part. Because that's every one of these. What's going to be different about that? And that's what makes it interesting, because we're listening to these and we have that expectation of that storyline. So what the music does or doesn't do with that is a huge part of what we experience as the music. And part, incidentally, of why some people do find classical music boring to listen to, because there is no mystery in it for them. You do have to at this point just sort of have studied the music, but back then it would have been clear, because it is a natural progression off of these sort of simpler tunes. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep trying to learn as many of these as we can. Number 13, lucky number 13 is called Rigadoon. And it is also marked allegro. Now, a rigadoon, I believe, is a form where I know that the rigadoon has to do with forms coming back. Okay, I just looked it up. So a rigadoon is a lively dance in 2. So that is accurate. We have cut time here. We're in the key of G major. This is a little bit longer. So what might that mean for the form? Well, probably in this case that it's really just 2 16-bar sort of things that we're used to, but they're going to be back to back. So we're going to see a little bit more variation here. All right, let's look through. Let's scan through. They have fingerings marked. Okay, look at how all of the phrases end with that quarter note rest. So we're going to really breathe. And I think we have a lot of freedom to make all of the phrases different. We're going to probably want to make sense of that. So if we look at the whole thing overall, there's 8 lines and 6 of them or 5 of them end with that quarter note rest. So how are we going to bring up? So it's kind of like line 5. That's like probably the second most important line. And then the most important line is the second to the bottom. And that's why they've also marked them different dynamics. And how do I know that? Well, those are the 2 lines where it doesn't end in the rest. So the third most important line would be the first line by the same logic. So, okay. Other than that, this is not that complicated. Remember that because we're in G, it's going to be a slightly different fingering on the D string versus the A string. On the D string, we use third finger. On the A string, we use second finger. So remember that, because I think that might be new for this. So we go. Connect. You can fade away. So I want to talk about these 3 lines because they're so similar, and it's so easy to just play them basically all the same. But music is never the same, in classical music at least, and many other genres as well. We have this first line. It's lively. It's like, right? But the second one, it's like, why are we doing this again? And we've come down because that's the answer phrase. So the fact that we are doing the same pattern again is like, okay, really what's going on, So there's our B section. So basically this is like double, everything is like double as long as the other forms we've done. Our A section is those first 2 lines. Here's our B section. That really kind of, to me, that takes us on a journey. We have 4 lines in a row. Half of this is this. And it's this thing that is both at the same time lively to me and also just a little bit sinister, potentially. So that's where I think the feeling in this one comes from. Not to mention the fact that we've switched over to being in minor, kind of in the B section a lot more as well, which is going to give that sadder feel. All right, so let's finish playing this, the last A section. can end there. So one thing too, because we didn't go into as much detail about how to set up the phrasing of each of these sections, but you can see how within there are actually 4 smaller phrases as well that are each 2 bars long, and we're just going to set those up the same way that we're used to, where it's that first one, that answer one, that further away one emotionally, and then that resolution one that's more triumphant. So that will still be present, in miniature in each of the phrases and through the form. So you can see how this is slightly more complicated than we've had. And that's what makes Suzuki really good. But paying attention now, because already I feel like that's pretty complicated. It sounded complicated to explain. It was probably complicated to hear. It's probably even more complicated to internalize. But it's actually not. So that's why I hope to be sharing it early on in this process. All right, let's see how much more we can do. Oh, etude. Okay, let me just play this. So that one's a little bit weird, I think, because it just ends on beat 3 instead of the downbeat. But anyway, you can maybe notice some similarities this has with the perpetual motion that we played, at least until the last half note. It is all eighth notes, and they're meant to be separate. And one of the things that I love that this one does is it does this hocket to the lower note. And what's really cool about that is that is the chord that we're playing. So I sometimes talk about, going to the relative major and all that, and we're pretty much just sitting with this G pedal at the bottom, this whole one. So that's kind of fun. Because we're actually in the key of C, right? So G is the dominant. So that's why we keep playing it every bar. This whole thing is like, come on, guys. Let's resolve. It just starts on the 5, so that's kind of funny about it. Maybe some of the dinky urgency of these etudes. And then we also have a variation here where we do 16th notes. And this is actually a great opportunity to talk about sautier, because I don't think we've made a video on this on. Where the bow's hairs are gonna stay on the string, but the stick's gonna bounce. And the way you're gonna achieve that is by moving quickly and having the bow in the right part of the string, because remember that balance point's like here, so you want to have it a little further than the balance point, and then you can also control it with your index finger. But you'll start by just doing short notes slowly. And I'm making the second one a little bit quieter, so. Okay, so you don't have to get to that speed quickly, but when you do, if you do that, really want to listen for, can you really hear the 2 notes? That's the important part there, because if it's messy, then it's not really doing it. But a few things that I'll point out about the phrasing. So we have, we basically are starting with a C major chord. That's C major. And we're really, because this is so pattern-based, they even call it etude, which again means study. So it's going to be something that's a little bit more technical than musical. We're just going through chords, baby. We're just, and then the next one up. Don't actually lift your shoulders when you play. I'm just kind of showing you the emotion of that. We go back to C. And then you can get a little bit more fervent there. And they've even, by putting this elision, where the phrase ends here, and then there's a pickup. And then that can be more bold, I think. They don't mark it as forte, but I think that, this is that contrasting section. Also, it's the highest note. So we can continue to follow this principle that the higher the note, probably the more important it is, as a rule, unless you're doing something different. So, and I like to hold that top note longer because that's going to give it more chance to ring. The other notes that are passing, we're familiar with the fact that they're C major. Same with that note. And then we want to be able to go back to the home. So that's where we can get the structure from this. You know, we have basically the same phrase 3 times, and then we have this B section that has 2 really big notes at the top of it. All right, so at this point, there are 3 tunes left in the book. Okay, and we've been going for almost 30 minutes. So I'm going to break these last 3 up into a 4th video, and we are going to see you in that. Once again, my name is Justin Leppard with Higher Hertz. We appreciate you guys watching this video. Again, definitely go out and get the Suzuki Volume 1. It's a great source of early classical repertoire. You can watch these videos to hear how to play it, how to read the music, how to just interpret what's going on, and definitely work on it on your own. Make sure to get practicing, and if you start getting stuck, let us know in the comments or pursue a local teacher who can help guide you further if you're actually practicing. Anyways, thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.